Map design. It's an integral part of any first-person shooter, the building blocks that provide the foundations of the battlegrounds we tread, and in Overwatch 2 specifically, an ever-growing monster of controversy and reinvention. With the swap to 5v5 taking two heroes away from the teamfight, map design has been thrust into the limelight, defended by some and taken by others as proof that the old days were better. So, are Overwatch 2's maps outdated? And if they are, what can be done about it? The most common talking points, typical of many a Reddit thread, are generally around how some maps are too wide open and there isn't enough cover to hide behind to make them feasible. One of the usual offenders in this conversation is Havana. It has wide open sightlines that leave snipers free to dominate without the ability for many to be able to contest all that often, and one of the main reasons that snipers have free reign over a map like this is due to the big move to 5v5 that came with Overwatch 2, with the loss of a tank leading to less pressure being put onto the sniper heroes, resulting in a player being able to essentially become the server admin and delete people as they see fit. It's a fair critique, and it does lend credence to the idea that the switch to 5v5 maybe wasn't quite as well thought through as some would like. Now sure, there is a relatively loud subsection of the Overwatch community online that are pleading for 6v6 to return in Overwatch 2, even with the sweeping changes that happened to the tank role and all the balance changes that went with that. I'm personally not necessarily against the idea of bringing back a pair of tanks into the lobby, but let's be honest, Overwatch 2, even in its current state, isn't often the pinnacle of balance. Reintroducing a tank to the mix after all the changes that have been put through would take a monumental rebalancing effort, especially since some of the current additions to the game, looking at you Mauga, would make the game an absolute nightmare to play. It'd be so much easier then to look at some of the simpler changes the devs could introduce to make maps more supportive of the 5v5. Put simply, to populate some maps with more cover instead of another person on each side. The glaring issue with some maps is simply the large amount of open space that can't be contested by a team at one time. Pretty much all of Havana, first point of Numbani and the first point of Junkertown all suffer from a lack of protected methods of getting close to the objectives. Something which was much less noticeable when a second tank was able to fill those gaps in the team's defence and take some of the heat off the back line. Combine that with the current stage of damage and healing in Overwatch 2, taking the wrong opportunity to peek at the enemy is basically a death sentence and is a guaranteed way to get sent back to the spawn room, and I'm not even excluding tanks from that. If the maps don't see a full rework like Hanamura has got for the new game mode Clash, then at the very least we need to see something added to the maps in order to provide protection for both sides. The new maps being made for Overwatch 2 obviously haven't had the same design philosophy implemented as the maps that were made for Overwatch 1. Paraiso, Midtown and Samoa are perfect examples of this new design philosophy, with each map having various methods of approaching a point, locations to hunker down and places to hide. They've been built with the lack of an off-tank in mind, instead providing spaces for the squishies to cool off and heal up, rather than another damage sponge to absorb the pressure. And look, there are outliers to this rule. Circuit Royale has proved to be a sore spot with players ever since the beta. Long sightlines that make snipers a good pick at pretty much all times, combined with Sigma being the only real reliable tank pick on the map most of the time, has meant a lot of players are being exhausted by the map, particularly because of how it leads to playing against the same comps and trying to run the exact same counters every time you're on it. Be it random boxes to hide behind, a new piece of debris to duck under, or just completely shutting off windows and doors, something needs to be changed with some of the maps to make them more approachable from both sides. If we take a closer look at the issues surrounding the first point of Numbani as an example, there is high ground all around the point, and you can access the objective pretty much from every side. A lack of teamwork is going to put you on the back foot pretty much straight away, with the only real consistent method of attackers capturing the objective being getting an early elimination onto someone and hoping it's enough to get rid of the rest. Fine if you're 5-stacking and you've got comms and have a coherent strategy to follow through with, but once again, it's a bit of a nightmare for those of you trapped in the solo queue. The first point almost feels like a relic of 2CP, with attackers having extended fights in an effort to obtain barely any progress on the objective and long distances to come back from in order to have a shot at recontesting. A little cover would go a long way to addressing some of its problems and rebalancing the map to fit 5v5 rather than rebalancing heroes to bring back 6v6. Which, to be fair, is probably just a little bit easier all round. Those are our thoughts on it anyway. How would you go around rebalancing some of the maps in Overwatch 2? Or would you rather just sack it all and bring back 6v6? Let us know why down in the comments. Hit that sub button if you fancy more Overwatch stuff like this. And while we've got you with us here at GGRecon, why not check out these videos here?